Good morning or good afternoon, whenever you're watching this video. I'm here with Dr. Glomman and Dr. Baker, and my name is Dr. Bell. We conducted some research over the school closings in spring of 2020 in result of COVID-19. Just introductions real fast. My name is Adam Bell. I am a school teacher, and I got to be in the classroom during all of the school cancellations and had the challenge of making everything go virtual immediately. Luckily for me, I had some experience with online LMSs, and so the students were pretty comfortable with our learning management system. So it was a struggle, but a lot of things were happening, and that's kind of what led me to get in contact with my fellow coworkers here to start the research on this. We'll go ahead and switch over to some introductions. Dr. Baker, would you like to go ahead and start?
Sure. I'm Credence Baker, and delighted to be part of this research team. I think when we started, it was right in April, right in the midst of, as Adam just said, educators being thrust into this sort of virtual learning environment. My background is as an associate professor of educational technology. And so right around that time, I also have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. So I was viewing this through the parent lens, and I was also viewing this through the lens of some of my former students and my current students, and even my own kids' teachers reaching out, asking me, how should I do this? How should I format this? And so really just had a keen interest in this larger project from those angles. So delighted to be here.
My name is Ryan Glomman. I'm a assistant professor at Tarleton State University, and my primary role on this team was to be a research methodologist. And so as we'll discuss later on, doing things like survey design and figuring out how we're going to approach the study in terms of sampling and who we want to study. So not nearly so interesting perhaps as viewing this through the parent lens or the, if you're in the trenches, such as with Adam. But anyway, yeah.
Well, that's a good segue though, Dr. Glomman, because that was one of our challenges, is like, what are we researching? Because there were many facets that we were trying to talk about, even down to at one point we were talking about how much electricity is being saved for the school, and could that be our study? And so I think we probably spent a good 40 hours just talking while we were all in lockdown quarantine. So but as we came together, we came up with we did a few things. We looked at online instructional teaching. We looked at a few other frameworks, but when we generated our survey, we sent it out, I believe it was across the nation, to through social media. So I went on Facebook groups, and I went through some teacher websites. So a lot of our respondents came from Texas. Actually, I think the majority of them did. And the end of it, I think most of our participants came in from Texas. But it was kind of neat. And the big highlight that a lot of people started gearing in and talking about, even across our society and amongst my teacher friends, was the social emotional piece. And that's where we investigated further with using the CASEL framework, or the CASEL framework. We pulled it from casel.org. And in fact, I can even share that website as to where this came from. And there we go, I'm gonna share that. So casel.org, and this is their framework. We're right here. And we kind of dove a little deeper into some of the tenets of their framework, including self-awareness, self-management, relationship skills, and social awareness. As we were combing through the results of our investigation, we found how critical it was with our parents and students that were in virtual learning, how much they depended upon their peer interactions. So for instance, to kind of jump into that, 49% of our participants indicated that they had to go seek out um, social interactions with other students. So that could have been done through, or that could have been completed through Cub Scouts. It could have been completed through like church groups and such like that. But a lot of them kept saying that every time we tried going out, things were canceled. So we ended up just resorting to just close friends and families who we trusted that would be allowed to go for our children to go hang out with. Ryan, did you want to talk a little bit about some more of the methodology before I share some of the results?
Sure. So to sort of talk about the nuts and bolts of what we did. So as Credence mentioned a little earlier in the presentation, we started developing this survey kind of right in the throes of the pandemic initially. So in spring of 2020, Adam, Credence, myself, and then another colleague who couldn't be here for this presentation, Dr. Leslie Leach, also at Tarleton State, we developed a survey to sort of assess or examine a variety of different constructs across both teachers in the K-12 setting who are trying to wrestle with this transition to online learning, and parents whose children are also going through this transition to online learning. And so we developed this survey. It covered a variety of things such as social emotional learning, which is the subject of this presentation, experience with technology, how easy the transition was, just a variety of different things. In terms of some more methody things before we dive into some results, we wound up with a national sample of 291 participants. 78 of which came from Texas. The rest were spread out across the US. Majority of our participants were female, about 87% of the sample. And they came from a mix of suburban, rural, and urban areas. So we developed this survey in the spring of 2020, and we deployed it, I'm trying to remember, in summer of 2020. So we deployed it summer 2020. Data collection lasted about a month long. We distributed the survey online using the survey platform Qualtrics, and we distributed it via email and the social media platforms, Twitter and Facebook. And then this was a qualitatively oriented study. So we used a qualitative analysis where we read through the data. All of these social emotional questions were open-ended in response format. And so we read through the questions and extracted relevant themes. And that's a little bit of what Adam's gonna talk about right now.
So, and I'm sorry I kind of jumped to the results earlier, so I'm glad we got this transition back. I do want to bring up though that the 49% of parents that sought out social interactions with their students or their own children, one of the most immediate cool findings that that I observed in that moment was that 50% of our parents said they had to go seek social interactions with their children. At the same time, 50% of the teachers said that students weren't successful. So it kind of, for me, I interpreted that as the parents who did go out to meet all of the tenets of our CASEL framework, those particular students were more likely to be successful with virtual learning than the parents who did not have some form of getting their children's social emotional needs met at home. So that was kind of a really cool moment to see. It kind of gave weight to the arguments of social emotional learning is needed in our school system. And looking at the trends of our investigation, I kind of see that, yes, there is there is relevance into student interacting with each other. So peer interaction during learning. A couple
Well,
of
can I
other,
just
yes,
interject on one thing? You
absolutely.
know, you talked about the time that we spent on the survey development piece, and I think that's important to talk through just in terms of we spent a lot of time on the wording for the teacher group and the parent group, and in making sure we were able to make those types of comparisons that you just mentioned, where we asked the teachers one thing and we asked the parents sort of the same perception type question. And it's been very fascinating, I think, to see some of those interplays between the two groups. And I know when we were writing for the parent piece, for me at that time, that was one of my biggest concerns, was they're not getting social interaction. And I know, you know, just the day-to-day grind of it was really wearing on me. And so, I think for me, that's been something very fascinating about seeing the results of this, is that interplay between what teachers say and what parents say related to the social emotional development.
No, absolutely, and thank you. It was kind of a challenge to make sure that the two were parallel to each other, yet we were addressing both of them. But because we did spend that much time looking at the questions in the survey, it was able to allow us that opportunity to see a cause and effect from the parent's perspective and the teacher's perspective. I will also, there's further highlights that are in our paper that we invite you all to continue to read after this conference video, but we really wanted to just give you the biggest highlight. It does appear that peer interaction was the key element for students to be successful during the COVID spring 2020 shutdowns. So for the parents that went in and got their kids interaction with their peers through scouting or other organizations outside of school, we believe that might be the reason they were successful for virtual learning. Do you all have anything else we want to add? We're kind of coming up to the end of our time.
You know, so maybe perhaps with regard to future research and really diving deeper into these findings, because, you know, it is very, you could go really, really detailed on some of these things. For instance, does the peer interaction have to be in person, or does it have, is it the in-person nature of the peer interaction with Scouts, or would virtual type groups suffice? And so there's all sorts of springboards, I think, off of this that could be very fascinating.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I feel like with our participation in SERA, I feel like we are digging into a bigger topic to go further investigate. And some of the school districts have even invited us to further survey their communities so we can dig deeper into what we discovered with this miniature investigation, if you will. All right. Well, Dr. Glomman, do you have anything to add before we conclude this?
I don't believe that I do. And as Adam mentioned a little earlier, more details in terms of the more specific outcomes of our analyses and details surrounding our study can be found in our paper, which I believe you'll be able to find in the online repository.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate you all.